Concert snare buzz speeds are determined by the dynamics and the tuning of the drum. So it's not just like a predetermined check pattern, like I'm always going to play 16th notes and like... That might sound good depending on the dynamics and the tuning, but it also might sound terrible. So if you're playing a 16th note check, like a 16th note leading into a buzz roll, you might actually do like a triplet if you're playing quietly. I'm going to emphasize the subdivision in it. So if you're playing quieter, you might have a smaller subdivision than what you're actually playing the check leading into it. But if you're playing louder, like 16th notes, and you play buzzes on that as 16th notes, it might not be enough buzzes in that space and time for that dynamic level. So what you might need to do is actually play faster subdivision for your hands. So I'm going to crush it so you can kind of hear it. So you might play like 6 tuplets if you're playing extra loud. So if it's too slow, it will have like decrescendos in the sound, where you kind of get that pulse in there. And if it's too fast, it can sound too compressed, too many notes fit into that limited amount of space, or it might even have a pulse to it. Now, another thing to consider is that the number of strokes per hand that you're using can either make it sound even or make it sound unintentionally pulsed. If your hands are even with your playing, so that you're just playing constant, like this, where one hand's got more and the other's got less, and you're playing a consistent check going back and forth between the hands, it's going to sound pulsed when doing that. So what you want to do is match it so that your right hand has the same number of pulses as your left hand whenever you are working on your buzzes. So you want to have it be a nice even pulse. So it might be 3 notes per hand or 4 notes or whatever it is that you're going for. I personally work on 3 strokes for my concert snare because of the tuning of the drum and the way that the guts vibrate with it. It's able to mask the fact that I'm playing 3s, so it doesn't sound as rhythmic as if I was playing it on this drum pad compared to on an actual concert snare, like a piccolo snare or something. The way that you play is it's going to have a natural decay if you're doing a bounce stroke with your buzz rolls. So when you're playing this, you're going 1, 2, 3. Your first note is going to be louder than your last note. You can actually compensate for this. I'll play the loudest note in a softer part of the drum, just a little bit off the center, and the softest note in the loudest part. So there's a slight sweep, maybe about a couple of inches. You're not going like from the edge all the way to here, so you're not going... This is not like a tenor sweep or anything like this, but you're going like this. A slight sweep in there to make it so that you have an even sound, as opposed to like a pulse, and I'm extra exaggerating here with this. So that's the goal with having that little sweep in there. A forte piano, you could play it as a single stroke, where you're playing an accent into a buzz. You might also do an accent that is a buzz stroke on one hand. You might also do an accent that is 2 accents. Or you might even do like some singles into a very low sounding buzz. So there's many ways that you can play like a forte piano buzz on here, but there's also many ways that you can play accents on there. For example, you could do an accent where you're playing like a low taps, and you're going to actually play just a tap or a buzz. It just kind of depends on how articulated you want it to be. Now, there are some ways that you can actually practice this with some play-alongs. Under the grid variations, there's over 1,000 of these variations linked at the top of the screen. But underneath the buzzes, you can do triplet or 16th note. So let's say you're working on like a 16th note check pattern. What you could actually do is work on buzzes so that all of the notes are buzzed, or you can work on it so that it's buzzes on taps. And there's different kind of like accent patterns in here. So there's the buzzes on taps, and then there's buzzes right here, either forward or backward. When you go into the timestamps in the description, you can jump to whatever BPM you want. Like let's say you want to work this up at like 102 beats a minute. This is a variation on working on buzzes where you are articulating the accent as opposed to putting a buzz on it, and this permutates the accent, so it's all on the first partial, all on the second partial, all on the third partial, and then all on the fourth partial, and you 4-2-1 that. So you do 2 counts of each, and then 1 count of each. So this is a great way that you can work on your concert buzzes, even though this is a grid variation, which is typically used more in like rudimental context. So highly recommend checking out the buzz on taps or the buzzes for 16th note, but then there's also the same variations for triplets if you go right into this particular playlist. When you're working on buzzes, it's also very important, especially with like concert snare, to put the strainer, the little lever that you turn on and off the buzzes, in front of you, so that way you always know where it's at, so you can quickly turn it on and turn it off. When you start playing, turn it on beforehand. When you stop playing, turn it off, so that way it doesn't vibrate when like the brass strings or winds or whatever starts playing certain pitches. It will make it so that your guts, the snares, will vibrate. So turn it off when you're not using it, but have it in front of you. And then when you're working on dynamics and you're moving, so you're playing on louder and softer, move straight forward and back to where you were in the center. So that way you are staying over the guts. So if the snare guts are right in front of you with the strainer right here, and you're moving there and then moving back, you'll get a snare sound the entire time. As opposed to if you are having your snares over to the side and you move forward, over here, you're not going to get the snares to activate as well as if you were actually playing right over the guts. With the marching snare drums, this is a little bit different, because the marching snare drums, you can't really like rotate your drum to make it so that the guts are in front of you. The guts are on the side, the strainer that is. So turning on and off is on the side, and so you might be at like a diagonal angle, maybe like this. So when you're playing on a marching snare, when you're moving with a buzz, or like anything really, I guess, but you're actually going to move at a diagonal angle if you want to still activate the snares. So if the snares are at an angle like this, instead of moving straight forward when you're playing towards the edge, you'd move at an angle so you still hear the snare sound when you're doing this. Otherwise, you'll just hear like almost like a very high-pitched tom sound, as opposed to hearing the snare guts vibrate on the bottom. When working out, trying to build muscle or training, etc., there's an idea that you should not do any kind of cold therapy, like ice baths or cold presses or anything, on a muscle until after like a few hours, so that your body has time to naturally work through the inflammation. So like, don't take like an ibuprofen, anti-inflammatory something. So you can make sure that your body responds appropriately to inflammation by squashing it on its own, getting rid of that inflammation. When people recommend doing ice baths or ice treatment for inflammation, which is the point of icing your forearms, don't do it immediately after drumming. Do it a few hours later, and it can be on days off if you feel like your arms are inflamed, or if you feel like you need to drain the blood from it. Elevation and the cold can help shrink the inflammation. The point of the hot therapy, like a heating pad, is to relax it. The two work together in that you lower the inflammation with the ice, and then you relax things, which makes it so it's not as tight with the heat treatment. And so doing about 10 minutes-ish each and alternating them can help. If it's tight, start with heat. If it's inflammation, start with cold. Doing the alternating between the two, usually like at least 2 sets. So like ice, hot, or hot, ice, hot, ice. Sometimes I'll do that multiple times during the day. But again, give your body that time to recover on its own before you start implementing external things to assist with that recovery process. At least a few hours, so that way your body can like not forget basically how to take care of inflammation on your own. Because like inflammation is a very bad thing for the body if you can't get rid of it for a variety of reasons.